Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, who is right now testifying in the impeachment probe, represents the beating heart of the quintessential American story. He and his family, Jewish refugees carrying only their suitcases and $750, that's based on reporting in the New York Times, fled the Soviet Union when he was 3 years old in search of a better life. His father worked multiple jobs and learned English at night so his son could grow up, graduate from college, receive a military commission, and serve the United States in the form of multiple overseas tours. On combat deployment in Iraq in 2003, Vindman was injured by an IED. He was awarded a Purple Heart. He's worked in several embassies, and he joined the National Security Council last year after passing an extensive background check, unlike some other West Wing advisors we know. His biography and his life of service make the attacks against him remarkable at a time when attacks on once sacred institutions and their leaders have stopped being noteworthy or newsworthy. Trump went from not knowing him to calling him a never-Trumper in the course of an hour and a half this morning. But that's nothing compared to the smear campaign happening on cable news.
We also know he was born in the Soviet Union, immigrated with his family, young. He tends to feel simpatico with the Ukraine.
It seems very clear that he is incredibly concerned about Ukrainian defense. I don't know that he's concerned about American policy, but his main mission was to make sure that the Ukraine got those weapons. I understand that. We all have an affinity to our homeland where we came from. Like me, I'm sure that Vindman has the same affinity.
Here we have a U.S. national security official who is advising Ukraine while working inside the White House, apparently against the president's interest, and usually they spoke in English. Isn't that kind of an interesting angle on this story?
I find that astounding, and some people might call that espionage.
Except those people aren't chicken like the three of you, and they know that he passed a background check that the president's daughter and son-in-law didn't.
This is MSNBC's Nicolle Wallace, decidedly not parsing her words as she hits back at yet another round of bad faith Republican talking points. And this time we're looking at a concerted effort to smear Army Lieutenant Colonel Alex Vindman. Vindman was on the infamous Trump call with Ukrainian President Zelensky and twice registered internal objections. He's now testifying to investigators in the House against what he saw as the partisan play of making foreign aid conditional upon political investigations, claiming that it would, quote, undermine U.S. national security. And so clearly, for committing the cardinal sin of trying to protect our national security, Republicans have decided that he'd be the perfect target for a coordinated smear campaign. And just so we're clear, here's the person that these Republicans are attacking. Vindman emigrated to the United States at the age of 3 as a Jewish refugee, went on to graduate from Cornell, deployed to South Korea, then Germany, then Iraq, where he was wounded by a roadside bomb and was awarded a Purple Heart, then became an Army Foreign Area Officer specializing in Russia for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, before ultimately joining the National Security Council in 2018. That is who the We Love Our Military Party is running a smear campaign against. Yep, nothing like throwing a Purple Heart recipient under the bus to protect a draft dodger to show America just how much the GOP loves the military. Of course, it doesn't matter who it is. The right's only priority is to defame anyone and everyone in their desperation to defend the president. If Matt Gaetz suddenly turned around and admitted that Trump committed crimes, it wouldn't take 5 minutes before the right would start asking exactly how they were supposed to trust someone with a history of DUIs. And so it shouldn't come as a surprise that even though Alex Vindman is a model witness, a decorated and active Army Lieutenant Colonel who has dedicated his life and nearly sacrificed it to serve this country, Republicans have no qualms about defaming him anyway because their sole mission is to shield Trump. And by the way, he's not the first one. The floodgates have opened in terms of public servants and military veterans who've testified under oath that Trump used his public office to extort a foreign country into doing his political bidding. And while the GOP would have you think that it's just a parade of leftists and socialists, it's not. These people are all Trump appointees. There was Bill Taylor, the UN ambassador to Ukraine, and a 50-year public servant who was handpicked by Trump's Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. There was Marie Yovanovitch, the former ambassador to Ukraine and a member of the United States Foreign Service. There was Fiona Hill, who served for more than 30 years across 6 administrations. Kurt Volker, the former special envoy to Ukraine. Laura Cooper, the Pentagon official overseeing Ukraine policy. All of these people have testified the truth, that Trump leveraged military aid for an investigation into Joe Biden. Biden. There was even Gordon Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the European Union and donor of $1 million to the Trump campaign, who admitted to House investigators that Trump's actions on the Ukraine call did indeed amount to a quid pro quo. $1 million. If that guy could find it in himself to admit that, yeah, Trump broke the law, that probably doesn't bode well for the White House. With that said, we really shouldn't give much credence to these attacks. Republicans have spent the last month coming up with whatever half-baked excuse they could before watching it get swatted away and immediately pivoting to a new one. We've heard that the whistleblower was a partisan, that you can't present secondhand information, that Schiff counseled the whistleblower, that impeachment is unconstitutional, that Democrats are holding secret hearings in the basement, that there was no quid pro quo, that, okay, fine, there was, but quid pro quos aren't a criminal offense, and now that Trump's own appointees are somehow never-Trumpers looking to take down the president from within. And I'm sure they've got some poli-sci minors at Liberty University cooking up the next pathetic defense to roll out as soon as they realize how ridiculous they sound, suggesting that a Purple Heart recipient is actually loyal to Ukraine over the United States because he escaped the Soviet Union when he was 3. Although, to be honest, Republicans might as well save their breath, because they're not so much changing any minds as they are putting their desperation on full display.